What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark, Mac the Movie Guy. So click that subscribe button and a happy Father's Day to those of you who qualify under that banner. It's also June 18th, and it's a very special day. This review of Extraction 2 is going to be dedicated to my best friend who actually is no longer with me anymore, who committed suicide a few years back. And I think he would have loved this. I did not. However, I think he would have, and I owe a lot to him. I hardly owe my name to him. Mac the Movie Guy came as sort of a little bit of a variation on what he gave me. I'm old enough that when the internet was starting to proliferate in homes and we were all starting to get home computers, he got his before me and he got the internet before me. So he signed me up for my email address and picked it out, and he always wanted to be cool, and we were like middle school kids, and so he picked out this Mac Daddy NLS, and NLS, for those who don't know, stood for No Limit Soldier. Do I look like somebody who that qualifies for? No. It's one of those emails too that I felt so weird telling people. So when I finally got my own computer and I got my own everything, internet and everything, because everybody was sending around those AOL discs. So when it finally happened for me, I kind of went in and I was like, I'm gonna change this up a little bit and have it represent me a little bit. And so my cool middle school decided, let's drop the daddy NLS part, and I kept the Mac part, and that's how I became Mac the Movie Guy. I wouldn't have thought of Mac otherwise. So that is where Mac the Movie Guy comes from, and I've had it ever since. I'm turning 40 this year, and I think I've had that email since I was like 13, 14. So it's been a long time. And that's why I just wanted to take a second to, on his birthday, which also happens to be Father's Day, and just take a moment to say thank you to him wherever he is, and acknowledge the fact that he would have loved this movie. Sadly, I did not. I also didn't like the first Extraction. However, this does have audio description, and it is on Netflix. So if you like this stuff, then fine. This kind of just feels like a long time ago we used to make action films that really didn't need a plot. We just kind of dropped people into the jungle and they just kind of killed people. And it was like pre-John Wick. It was pre-stylization before we tried to put people into worlds with revenge plots, people with a very particular set of skills. I kind of miss the action movies where the people didn't have a particular set of skills, where they were just thrown into a situation and then they had to die hard their way out of it. Like that, to me, was really interesting. When the person was not necessarily like, oh, by the way, I have all this extensive training, so that makes me the perfect person for this scenario. Thank God I'm in it. I liked it better when it was somebody like a Bruce Willis, who was, he was there and he was the good guy and he stepped up and he handled it like a boss. To me, those were always more interesting coming out of that time period than the movies where it was just like, we're here just to shoot guns and kill people, and is there a plot? Nah, not really. Here the plot is, here it's really even hard to talk about the plot because I can't remember the first Extraction. I'm sorry. I don't, there's only just so much space in our brains, and for movies I didn't like, it's not like I'm spending a lot of brain space on memorizing and being like, oh, I remember all of this. This was so terrific. Yes, I remember those characters, and I remember exactly how this film ended. Oh, and that sequence, that was so not good, but I remember all of it. You know, like, I didn't download that into my brain and put it in permanency. At the time when I was watching Extraction, I wasn't thinking to myself, I should really try to remember this because there's going to be a sequel. Um, a lot of times I try to review the original before the sequel. I refuse to. I refuse to go back and watch the original Extraction. Because I just, what's the point? I can tell you I didn't like it. And yeah, we'll just move on. So I guess he died basically at the end of the last film, Chris Hemsworth, and we kind of open up with that. But however, he's also the star of this film, so I feel like I'm pretty safe in telling you that even though the film opens with him in like this precarious situation where he's like, as one character points out, that he was like legally dead, and then he was like in a coma, and they were like talking about like, you know, do we pull the plug? I don't know. I believe in him, and like he like kind of works his way out of that, and he hits into physical therapy, and then of course somebody comes in and they're like, we need you back on the job. It's like, well, I was just dead a couple months ago, but sure, you know, why not? And that's I guess his squad, his team, whatever, the people that he has, they that's kind of their thing. They're like, you were dead just like a couple months ago. How are you gonna go extract somebody again? Well, you know, Idris Elba came to me, and I must, I cannot. We paid for Idris Elba to be in this movie so he could come and he could tell me what it was that I needed to do, and I don't understand how I cannot not do that now. Do you understand what it's like to work with Idris Elba? That is my Chris Hemsworth impression. So they drop his ass into the jungle, and I don't know, there's some weird drug lord thing, and some guys, it's a very loose plot. It's a very not, they did not invest a whole lot of time in this plot. I mean, Chris Hemsworth gets there pretty quickly, and he starts extracting people before you even really know who he's extracting. He's just taking these people out. He's like, we're going. It's a very weird scenario too, because it's like this family, and they've got kids, and and they're also like in a jail. So he has to break this family out of a jail. It's so weird. Anyway, the film is basically, though, an excellent just exercise in audio description, because the film has almost no dialogue. No sustainable dialogue, anyway. Nothing that isn't like just shouting a random line. Like, I'll get you! Or give me my family! You know, like just like randomly shouted lines. There really isn't like a scene where people just stop and they just kind of, everything just stops and they just kind of talk for a while. You know, it gets quiet. And I'm like, hey, so what's up with you? I don't know. I'm just chilling. Got my Nintendo Switch. What's going on with you? You know, it's pretty much nonstop action. So much so it kind of becomes relentless. That was kind of my thing about the first film, is it's like, man, we're still going. And it doesn't even feel like it has levels to it. Like John Wick, it doesn't feel like it's creative. Like with John Wick, it kind of feels like you're moving through it like a video game. Like there's a boss, and it's like, oh, he's fighting a different assassin in a different scenario, in a different place. He's moved, you know, like it's a lot of action, but it's like sequential, with clearly different staged fights. It's not one long sequence of extraction. It's just what kind of this film, it feels like. It's not that, but I mean, it feels like that. It feels like just one gigantic action sequence, which to some people will be really impressive, and that'll be something that you like. I do like my films to have plots. I do like my films to have character development. This film does not have the depth. It isn't interested in doing that. It isn't interested really in giving the characters the space and the time to really develop themselves in a way where you can actually become invested in anybody. It's even hard for me to be invested in the people who were, I guess, in the first film. Like, I mean, I assume they were in the first film. We just kind of get introduced to people, and it's the way that, the film kind of assumes that you remember them, by the way, and doesn't really introduce them to you. It just says, like one of them is Nick, and it's just like, Nick is standing at the bed, and I'm like, I don't know who Nick is, but okay, good for Nick. Nick is here. We have Nick. We found Nick. It's just, they're really confident in the fact that you saw Extraction, you loved Extraction, and you remembered Extraction. They're really confident in that. This film is absolutely, I don't know that it needed to exist. I know Chris Hemsworth, he was like willing to fight Scorsese and Tarantino because they were kind of like, I don't know about streaming, blah, blah, blah. We can't really make the same films for streaming. And Chris Hemsworth was like, oh, I don't know, I've made this Extraction franchise. Seem to be doing pretty good over here on the streaming service. It's, no, it's not. It's not the same thing. Your movie is not the same thing. Sorry to say. It's just, it's to compare that to anything that Scorsese or Tarantino has made is just so wildly different. It's very much it feels like, name a Chuck Norris movie. That's what this is. It kind of feels just like that. Actually, don't name a Chuck Norris movie, but imagine the Chuck Norris movie that you can't remember the name of. It's that one. That's the one. It's the Seagal film that you forgot the name of. It's one of those. That's what it is. It has so little interest in necessarily developing characters. It rides solely based off of one man that it boldly decides to cast a ton of people you've never heard of. It doesn't even... Idris Elba is not in that much of the movie. I'm just going to go ahead and spoil that. If you're showing up for Idris Elba, don't. It's not... You will be disappointed. Yes, it is. It's not an Idris Elba movie. So, yeah, it kind of feels like those other films where we had Chuck Norris or somebody like Chuck Norris adjacent, and they were just kind of plopped into these films. I think Tom Berenger was making some of these for a while there. Jean-Claude Van Damme definitely has some forgettable films where he just kind of, there's no one in it but him, and he just fights people the whole film. You're like, what is it about? I don't know. It's just him kicking people in the face for 2 hours. I liked it. So there is an audience for this, but it's the audience that likes nonstop action. But mad props and kudos to the audio description team, because they basically have the whole film to work with. I mean, it's like nonstop audio description. You can sort of hear the sound effects in the background, but they spend the whole time really committed to attempting to audio describe as much of the pervasive and persistent audio action sequences as humanly possible. So it's not my cup of tea. The first one was not my cup of tea. If the first one... Here's my thing. I'm not mean. I just watched a review with Chris Stuckman where he's like, everything is like love it or hate it. And we don't have the ability to talk about films in any sort of constructive way. Some things are love it or hate it. And I have plenty of films that are in the middle. And I'll admit that when it's in the middle. And I'll also admit to you that if you liked the first Extraction, this is basically the same thing. I can't imagine that you would like the first one and not like the sequel. From what I the little bit that I remember of the first film, this is basically the same thing. Um, it just wants to give you that action. It doesn't really care if there's a plot or that you want one. It just it's hoping that the action sequences are enough. For blind people, I know that's a grab bag. There have been plenty of action films that have interested me, even though I can't see them, because they're interesting movies outside of necessarily the action sequences. I like the John Wick franchise. But with this, I just needed more. I needed more characters. I needed more plot development. The beginning of the film is silly. It's just, I mean, you can't tell us that the lead of the film is going to be Chris Hemsworth and then start the film with him dead. And it's like, okay, so obviously he's going to wake up from his coma, like obviously they're not going to pull the plug. There's a lot of things that are not going to happen because he has to go extract again, because that's the film. So it's kind of like a waste of the beginning of the film. And then the rest of the film is just action. So anyway, not my cup of tea, but it might be yours. And that's fine. There are a lot of people, my best friend would have loved this. He would have absolutely loved this film. He'd be calling me and just telling me, he'd be like, oh my God, I saw Extraction 2. I know you did. This was totally up his alley. And unfortunately, I'm going to give Extraction 2 a D. It is not my cup of tea. I like Chris Hemsworth, and I wish him all the projects in the world, especially before he ends up, I'm presumably retiring at some point, as he's talked about. I think he's on a break right now, ever since he found out that he carries the gene for Parkinson's. But hopefully we can get him some really fantastic projects. So that's it from me. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Hope you all have a nice Father's Day. And I will review something else for you guys and see you on the other side.